Greetings, Jedis and young Padawans, and welcome to another tutorial on how to craft in Minecraft 1.8. And in today's lesson, we are going to learn how to create our very own sword. Yes, you've heard that. We are going to create our sword that is going to slay so many beasts on the battlefields of Minecraft. We're going to make our sword so epic that it is the best sword that anyone could have inside Minecraft. And as you know, what we've done in previous lessons, we've done things like creating items, we've done things of creating ores, and we've just created our pickaxe. And today, as promised, we are going to create our very own sword. So let's get straight into it. So as you remember, we need to make sure that our main.java file is open, because this is where everything goes. But you know this already, so I don't need to keep going over this all the time. But as you can see, that we've got tutorial sword empty here, and we've got run the sword empty here. And as you know, all our sample code by now is in our sample section here, and all our code belongs in here. And as you can see, we are getting very close to the end of our lessons. Our last one is going to be all about food here, and then we'll learn how to package your items and then send them off to your friends. But for now, we want to focus on the sword. So if we expand this one here, you already know, young Jedis and Padawans, that these two files here are our main important ones. This main.txt file here, and this test sword here. So let's get straight into it. So let's open up these two files, so our main.txt, and let's open up our class.txt file. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to go through this quite quickly, because you already know how to do all the copying and pasting and putting everything inside Minecraft. So, our first thing, as you remember, is to put our declaration into our main.java. So yes, you know that we're going to select this line of code here, we're going to copy this, and we're going to go into our main.java file here. And you already know by now that that declaration is going to go into this section here. So we're just going to make an enter space and throw that in. And as normal, we seem to see that we've got some errors. And as we've spoken about in so many episodes now, that these two errors are pretty much self-explanatory. We've got this one here, remember, which is the error that is saying we need to import Minecraft's idea of what a sword is. So to do that, if you remember correctly, is we just hover over this and we import this sword. Now notice there isn't loads others like last time, because this is specific to a sword itself. So as you can see, it's just got this net.minecraft.item, and this is what we want. We want this sword. So we select that. And as you can see, the error disappears in a matter of seconds. Our next step is to then look at what we're creating. So we called our sword a test sword, and we're going to create a new sword here. And this is basically saying, well, this is going to be a new, can you guess? Yes, it is going to be a new class we need to create for this sword. Now, if we hover over that, we can quite quickly just create a class called test sword. So we selected this option, and remember, we do not change here anything, young Jedis and Padawans. We do not change anything here, we do not put anything in here, but all we do is just change the extension of the package. And to do this, we're going to put dot, and as you can see, we've got our block, item, and pickaxe, and this time we're just going to put in sword, because that's what we're making, a sword. It's as easy as that. Creating a package called tutcallc, so it's going to go into this package right here, and it's going to be called sword, so it's going to create another package called sword. So we hit the finish button here, and it then creates our package, or our class, shall I say, sorry, our class of our sword, and that class name is now called test_sword.java. And as you already know by now, we then look at our second step, which is looking at the class we have created for this test sword here. And as you can see, I've already pre-done everything for you. So what we're going to do is we're going to select everything here. So we're going to grab all this material here and we're going to copy this. So again, we can either press Control C, or we could right click, copy, and we're going to go into our testsort.java. We're going to select everything here. We're going to delete that. So we're going to press delete or backspace. And then we're going to paste that new code in. And notice, once we pasted this new one in, we haven't got any errors this time because remember, we've got package. This is the main package, .colc, this package here. And then it's saying, well, let's look into the sword section of the package. And here we go here. We've got the sword package here. If we go further down, you already know that we import certain features. Now, what's going to be interesting is when we look at lesson 7, I'm not going to give you any sample code. What we're going to do is in lesson 7, we're going to code together. Yes, that is correct. In lesson 7, we're going to code together so we can see if there are any changes or anything that you didn't quite remember. Hopefully that will refresh your memory. So we imported everything that's required for our sword. And we have our public class, which is our test sword here, which extends onto the item sword. Now, hopefully I don't need to explain this anymore. And saying that, well, this is the name of our item. And what we're doing is we're going to say, well, Minecraft, this actual item that we are creating, or this object, is going to be a sword. And what we then have is after that is the function for our sword. And as you can see, we've got public test sword, because it is going to be our sword. And underneath we've got this material that is iron. Now this is going to be the strength of your sword. So you could also have any type of material here. There's quite a few bits of information here, but really we'll look at all these in a more advanced session. This is a bit too much for a basic tutorial. But if we go down a little bit more, you'll notice we've got these values here, which are going to be extremely important to creating your sword. So we could say, well, Minecraft, I am now creating a Jedi sword, and I want it to have the strength of wood. Now, that's not going to be a very good Jedi sword now, is it? And then we have, well, I want to have my Jedi sword have the strength of a stone. Well, that's not any good to us neither. But maybe I want to have the strength of an iron sword for my Jedi sword. So you just select that iron. Notice, though, young Jedis and Padawans, there is no diamond property. Okay? If you're wanting to make things as strong as diamond, when we look at more advanced tutorials, I'll show you how to create efficiency on those items to give it more of a strength to maybe one-shot the Ender Dragon. Or you could make a sword that could be so weak that it takes 1,000 hits to kill a skeleton. So for this base of this tutorial, we're just going to use the property of iron for this sample. And then, as you already know, we've got this set unlocalized name, and then we've also got this creative tab, which is saying, well, put my sword that I've created into the combat tab inside Minecraft. However, are we completed? Well, no, Wazza. We have been through this so many times. We now need to register that item into Minecraft. So what we need to do with this Java file, because we're done with it, we now save that class. Now remember, to save, we could press Ctrl S, or we could go File and Save. Any option is comfortable for whatever you feel comfortable with when it comes to saving. So either Ctrl S, or you go to File and Save, whichever one's easier for you. And now we're going to turn ourselves back into this main.txt file here. And as you noticed, and it's exactly the same, again, 2 lines of code here. I'd like you to get all this code, so all this section here. So get all of this code here, and again, copy it. And we're going to go into our main.java, and we're going to paste this exactly the same place where we have put it for all our items, ores, and pickaxes. And it's doing exactly the same thing. It's saying, well, Minecraft, please can you register my sword, please? Okay, well, I'll register your sword for you. And then our next line here, if you remember, this line here is saying, well, Minecraft, my sword needs a texture. And if we have a quick sneak peek, at the moment, we have not got a texture for our sword just yet because we need to do one final step. That is correct. We need to do one more step. And that step we have to do is we have to go into our samples. We need to go to our images. We then need to go to our items. And here we go. I've created a test_sword.png for you here. What I'd like you to do, young Jedis and Padawans, is to right click on this and I'd like you to say copy. And where are we going to put this? Well, remember, in our resources part, so remember this one's all for the code, and then we've got our resources section, which is all to do for our items. So we expand this one, and remember, all our images are going to go into this textures section here. So if we expand that out, we've got our blocks, remember that was for our ore, and we've got items which holds our pickaxe and our item. So what we're going to do now is we're going to right click on the items and we're going to paste our sword into the items. And Eclipse is saying, Wazza, please can you save me before we do anything wrong? And we just say, okay, we'll save you. And now we should have our sword working inside Minecraft. So let's have a look. Let's run that. So let's run our program. So we just wait for it to load. And let's go into our single player mode. And let's open up our island of creepers. And inside our world, we should have a huge mess. A massive mess. And we've got a cow. Hi, cow. How are you? Do you mind leaving for a second whilst I just speak to the audience? Thank you. Just carry on walking that way. If you'd like to walk into the hole, you may. So let's go and open up our inventory. And as you can see, we've got all the items that we have been looking at so far, especially all these lovely diamonds, all these diamonds. Can't make any blocks out of them. But what we need to do is we need to change our game mode into creative. And as you know, what we did is we said inside our code, in our class here, if we just swap over to it, inside our class we said, well, our sword is going to be in the combat tab here. So the combat tab. And the combat tab you can find just here. And if we have a look and we keep going through all the items, and hey presto, here he is here. The Jedi sword with 6 attack damage. So let's put ourselves into survival and let's go find the cow. Hello, cow. Just a friendly introduction. And bam. And there we go. And we pretty much one-shot a cow. Let's go have a look at the horses. So let's take a run down there and let's go visit our horses. And let's see how much damage we can do to a horse. Bam. 1, 2, 3 hits. Because we've got a value of an iron sword, it does take a little bit longer to add damage to the creepers or any type of creature inside Minecraft itself. So what we want to look at is, like, you're saying, Wazza, well, you made us make all these objects and you made us get all these ores, and at the moment all I can do is make sure I go into creative mode and then I can only access my item. Well, young Jedis and Padawans, what I'm going to show you now is how we use all those items we have created to make our sword. Oh yes, you have heard it here. We are now going to create our sword by using all the resources that we have. Now this is going to require you to do a little bit of coding. I will try and be as slow as I can. If you do find it a little bit difficult or I'm going a little bit fast, please pause the video, then continue on through the tutorial. Okay, so let's close down Minecraft. So let's close that down. And let's head into our main.java file here. Now remember, right down at the bottom of our main.java, we had all these things to do with recipes and smelting. So we had all this information here. Okay, and let's say I now want to make a new recipe that is going to create my sword. Well, this is very easy, young Jedis, because what we're going to do is we're going to grab this code here. So we're going to grab this recipe. We're going to copy this recipe. So we're going to copy it. And we're going to make a few enter spaces. Now, please remember, young Jedis, that you're going to take this little cheeky little semicolon here, and you want to grab everything that belongs in this section here. Okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to change this up a little bit. So we're saying, well, we want to register a new recipe, but in this case, we now want to create our sword. Now, our sword name, so let's take this out. Our sword name that we have, it's called test underscore sword. And as like magic, it then says, okay, I'm now going to create the test sword. But we don't want to use this recipe that we had here, that we created all this diamonds. What we're going to do is we want to make our recipe a little bit different. So let's say I want to use my items. So the item, this one here, to create my sword. Now, as you know, a sword goes 1, 1, 1, and we're going to do exactly the same thing. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove, oops, we'll go down. We're going to remove those out. And then we're going to remove those out. And we're going to remove these ones out. Okay? Now you've got to think of this as a crafting table. And we need to put in values of what we think our sword's going to be. Now as you know, it's an empty block, then something, then an empty block. And then the next row down, we've got empty something, then we've got an item, and then we've got another empty block. And then the one underneath it, we've got something empty, and then a block, and then something empty. So we have to sort of do this inside Minecraft to make it understand how this is crafted. And what we're going to do is we're going to represent our item with the letter D. Okay? Hang on for now because we haven't changed anything yet, but we're still going to use this character here called D. You could call it whatever you like. You could put I. You could put Q. You could put whatever you like, but for now we'll just use the letter D. It's just a little bit more easier. But you could change it to whatever you like. Now, to put it into our crafting table, we're going to say, well, I'm going to have an empty area, so I'm going to press spacebar for empty. And then I need to have my item, D. And then I need to have another empty area and press spacebar. Okay? So let's do that again. Oops, got rid of that. Now I've got too many. So we're going to press spacebar for the empty bit. We're going to press D for the item, and then we're going to press spacebar again for another empty area. We do exactly the same thing, so we're going to press spacebar, D, spacebar. So we're saying we're going to have item, item, and then we're going to have nothing, item, nothing. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to say, well, we need an item, or my item, shall I say, and a stick. Okay, so we're going to have an item, and a stick. How cool is that? That's pretty cool. But we need to change a little bit more of information down here. So we need to remove this because we don't want to use our block of dirt for the value of D. And what we want to use for our value this time is going to be test item. It's as easy as that. So we're going to say, for the letter D, I want to use my item that I have created. However, for the value of S, I want to use a stick. Now, I can't just say stick because we haven't created a stick. Okay? So what we have to do is we have to say items dot. And we need to go through this whole list and see if we can find a stick. So if we go all the way down, we should be able to find stick here. So we double click on that, and that's pretty much all you need to do to create your own recipe for your item that you have. So we've said we're going to register a new recipe. So we're saying Minecraft, we have a new recipe here. And what we want to do is we want to create our sword, please Minecraft. And to create our sword, we need to have an item, and a stick. And we've said that because we said, well, for this value D here, it needs to be our item that we have. And then for this value here, being the stick at the bottom, is our last piece. So let's see this working in Minecraft. So let's save this, so Control and S, or File and Save, and hit the play button. And let's let it load up. Okay, so it's currently loading. Let's go into our single player and let's open up our Island of Creepers. And we just need to gather a few assets. So let's pop ourselves into creative mode, so game mode C. And we want to get our item. So if you remember correctly, our items was in miscellaneous. Where do we put our item? Where did we put our item? I cannot remember. Oh, item. Where are you, item? We have our ore block. I cannot remember where our item is. Let's do a search. Item. There it is. So if you can't find it, just go on the search button and type in item. You should be able to find it. So let's throw those seeds out, the cobblestone we don't need. Let's throw all this away. We've got a crafting bench. Let's throw the sword. Actually, let's just throw everything away. Apart from our ore. And let's grab a few of these items that we have. So a few of them. And we also want to grab some sticks. So let's grab some sticks. Like so. And let's head over to our crafting table. Oh, where are you, crafting table? Here it is here. And remember, when we crafted, we had empty, item, empty, empty, item, empty, empty, stick, empty. So let's do that. Let's put item, item, and let's put our stick underneath. And as like magic, we have now created our sword. And there we go. We can roam the battlefields of Minecraft, destroying things with our epic Sword of Doom. And that pretty much sums it up, of creating our own sword by using pretty much the same codes that we've been using for all the other items. We then looked at creating the class inside our package, and then what we looked at was making our very own recipe to craft our item. So let's just refer back to that. So let's close that back. So we then declared our sword here. So we declared it. We created a new class called New Sword. We gave it the strength of iron. So we gave it the strength of iron. We know about the whole naming things and etc. And then we gave it into our creative tabs of the tab combat. We then said, well, Minecraft, we then need to have I'll get our sword registered inside your game. And then we said, well, Minecraft, we need to make sure that there is a texture. We then put our texture into our items. And then Wazza threw a little bit of a spanner into the work and said, well, let's now create a recipe for that sword. And here's the recipe here. We changed the value inside here from items diamond to just our test sword here. We then made a recipe here. And then we gave values for each one of those characters. And that was pretty much it. That pretty much brings us to that session of creating our own sword inside Minecraft, but not just creating our own sword, but also creating our very own recipe for that sword. Thank you very much. My name's Wazza. It was nice to do another tutorial with you. I will see you for our next one, which is all to do with creating our very own food. Now remember, that tutorial we'll be coding all by ourselves. There will be no sample code this time, so we're going to do everything from scratch, and hopefully you'll be able to follow along with that tutorial. Again, thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next episode. Goodbye.